Cramp is actually a collaborative project with the University of Hawaii, and it stands for Coral Reef Assessment and Monitoring Program. And what we do is we go back to the same section of reef year after year. We have a series of 10 random transects on the reef marked by pins, so we can go back to the same spot every year. We run lines out and we photograph every half meter along that section of reef. So effectively we'll come back with a mosaic of that section of reef, and we can take that back to the lab, use a computer program to project random spots on it, analyze what's on the bottom. That gives us a measure of percent cover of the benthic environment or the coral reef. And then one of the parameters we use to kind of judge overall coral health is percent coral cover. So how much of the bottom is covered by living coral, and how is that changing from year to year? It gives us an idea of how things are changing, and monitoring is not really designed to tell us what's driving that change, but to measure that change. So what happens is we'll identify some reefs that have declined quite a bit and showing signs of degradation, and then we can look at other factors to try and figure out what might be driving that. Some reefs, for example, there's a lot of sediments that come in off of the watershed. So in those cases, we know maybe we need to do a better job of controlling that sediment transport. Other reefs might have problems with a lot of seaweed growth. And then we might want to look at, well, is there nutrients coming into the system? Or is there lack of herbivorous fish, grazing fish, that might help control that? So basically the monitoring just tells us what's happening, and then we look further to find out why that's happening.
With 15 years of data set now, is there any general statements that you can make about the reefs in general around Maui?
Yeah. Around the state, for the most part, the coral cover stand about the same. Some areas are increasing, some are decreasing. But around Maui, it seems like the majority of them are going down. Of like 10 sites we have here, about 2/3 of them or so are significantly decreasing in coral cover. And we have some sites like Honolulu Bay, just up north, Papula Point, which is our North Shore site just off the runway, the airport over there, and then Malaya Bay, that have completely gone off the end. They're no longer really functionally coral reefs. They've gone from 50%, 60% coral cover down to less than 10. And those areas tend to be dominated by algae growth, things of that sort. Other sites, just right up here in Kaanapali, North Kaanapali, Kaikili Beach Park, that site's gone down about 50%, but it has since started to stabilize, and we're doing some management there. And there's a site out at Oluwalu that's showing some declines. But some of them, like Molokini, are staying the same, which is a good sign, because Molokini's got pretty high coral cover. But Molokini is also off in the channel, kind of isolated from some of those land impacts. And it's also a reserve, so fish stocks are healthy. So overall, I think for Maui, we're seeing the reefs not doing so well, and it's kind of prioritizing some of the management efforts we're trying to do now as well. So for example, the one off of Kaikili Beach Park, for now 5 years, we have a herbivore fisheries management area. And we put that in effect because in the mid-2000s, like 2005, 2006, we were noticing chronic algae blooms during the summer. The coral cover was going down quite quickly, but yet there was enough habitat and enough fish that we figured some level of protection of the grazing fish might work. Those stocks would come up, and then they would help control the seaweed, ultimately increasing the resilience on the reef system. And it's early to tell for sure, but after 5 years, it looks like that might be working. We've got nearly twice as much biomass of important grazers, and there's early signs like the coralline algae, the purple and pink stuff on the rocks, is starting to come back. It's doubled in cover out there, and that's a precursor for corals to recruit on, and kind of helps glue and cement things down. So that's a good sign, but we're also using the overall concerns with the coral reef ecosystem, not just the coral itself, but also fish stocks being kind of depleted, to justify some of our management of fisheries. And so we're in the process of working on some bag limits and size limit changes to parrotfish and goatfish. Particularly in the tropics, areas like this, the coral reefs are really your foundation, your backbone, so to speak, of what we know reef life-wise, or fish life near shore. So yeah, if the coral reefs go, I mean, there'll be fish around, but it's going to be different. You know, the coral reefs, as they grow, create so much complexity, little cracks and crevices and ledges, that the fish, all the small fish depend on that, and the bigger fish feed on them. So a lot of people may not go out in the water and observe the reef, but if they're on shore, like some of the people here today fishing, they're impacted by the reef as well. So yeah, it's very important that we maintain that critical habitat for our nearshore fish.